Once upon a time, high above the sleepy world, tucked deep inside a swirling winter cloud, a snowflake was born. Her name was Flurry. She blinked into being, if a snowflake could blink, with 6 tiny crystal arms, delicate and dazzling, carved in silence by cold winds. Around her, thousands of other flakes danced and spun, giggling as the wind scooped them up and carried them down toward the world below. But not Flurry. She clung to the cloud, trembling in place, her frosty edges quivering. The thought of falling terrified her, not because she feared the unknown, but because she knew what came next. Snowflakes fell, and then they melted, disappeared into puddles, vanishing forever in the warmth of the sun. She peeked downward. Below, rooftops were blanketed in white. Trees sparkled with frost. Children laughed, catching flakes on their tongues. It looked beautiful, yes, but Flurry wasn't fooled. She had heard the stories from wind wisps. The fall was easy, the end was quick. She wanted to stay frozen forever. Up here in the cold safety of the cloud, she could remain herself, unchanged, perfect, untouched by time. But the cloud was thinning. The sun was rising. And the wind was stirring again. "Flurry, it's time," whispered a breeze, gentle but insistent. "No," she whispered back, curling her crystal limbs inward. "I'm not ready." The breeze giggled. "Nobody ever is." And with a playful tug, the wind plucked Flurry from her nest and spun her into the sky. She screamed, though no one heard it, and began to fall. Flurry tumbled through the sky, spinning head over heels in a flurry of panic. Around her, other snowflakes drifted gracefully, twirling like ballerinas on an invisible stage. They seemed to enjoy the fall, laughing, dancing, even singing. But Flurry flailed, flinched, folded her corners in. She tried to grab at passing wisps of wind, as if she could climb her way back up to the cloud. No use. The sky was letting her go. Down she drifted, past wispy curtains of mist and sleepy birds fluffing their feathers. Each flutter closer to the earth brought a new sensation. A change in the air. It grew warmer just a touch. The light grew brighter, even golden in places. Flurry squinted toward the source of the glow. A sun. Big. Blazing. Murderous. Her voice quivered like a brittle icicle. "Stay away, sun. I don't want to melt." But the sun didn't answer. It just shone, softly and steadily, as if it didn't even notice her tiny fear. A gust of air twirled Flurry sideways. She collided with another snowflake. Hexagonal, sparkling, laughing. "Watch it," Flurry grumbled, regaining her balance. "First fall?" The other flake asked with a chuckle. "Yes, and possibly my last," Flurry muttered, her edges twitching. The other snowflake twirled effortlessly. "Well, obviously. That's the point." Flurry stared. "What do you mean? You fall. You melt. You become something else. That's the magic." "Magic? It sounds like disappearing." "Not disappearing," the flake said. "Transforming." Before Flurry could argue, the wind spun them apart. She was alone again, except now, her mind whirled faster than her body. Was everyone around her happy to fall? Were they all just pretending? Or was she the only one clinging to what couldn't last? As Flurry spiraled lower, the air filled with voices, soft, shimmering, and strangely harmonious. A chorus of snowflakes sang around her, their tones light and tinkling like wind chimes in winter. Fall with grace, drift with delight, shimmer once, then fade to light. Flurry twisted toward the sound. Hundreds, no thousands, of snowflakes were falling in synchrony, forming a vast sky-born ballet. Each unique in pattern but united in motion. They spun, dipped, and waltzed on the invisible currents as if the fall were the grandest dance of all. One short flight, one shining breath. We greet the ground, then gifted death. The last line made Flurry shudder. Gifted death. That's grim. A nearby flake with delicate lattice arms floated beside her. Oh, you heard that verse. It's poetic, not tragic. Sounds tragic to me, Flurry said. The flake shrugged. Or did the wind make it seem that way? We're part of something bigger. When we melt, we nourish. Snow quenches roots, fills rivers, kisses cheeks. We don't vanish. We just pass the sparkle on. Flurry narrowed her eyes. I don't want to pass anything on. I want to stay like this. Perfect. Frozen. The flake just smiled. Nothing perfect ever stays perfect. But that doesn't mean it stops being beautiful. Their song resumed, drifting softer now as clouds began to thin above them. We fall, we fade, we bloom, we bend. Each ending souse, the next ascend. Flurry tried to hum along but couldn't find the tune. The music wasn't in her. Not yet. She stayed quiet, watching the dancers all around her and wondering if she was falling or failing. Below, the snowy rooftops were drawing closer. The fall slowed, but Flurry's thoughts sped up. She was descending toward a world she didn't understand, surrounded by flakes who welcomed their end like it was a party. The idea made her shiver, and not in the good icy way she liked. As her path drifted sideways, a strange shimmer caught her eye. Hovering beside her was a snowflake unlike any she'd seen. He was older, larger, his edges less sharp but somehow more intricate, like time had carved stories into his icy limbs. You seem troubled, little flake, the elder snowflake said in a slow, crackling tone, like ice creaking on a frozen lake. I am troubled, Flurry replied. Why isn't anyone afraid of melting? The elder chuckled. Oh, we've all been afraid. First, even me. But you're still here, she said hopefully. For now, he said with a wink. I ride the air currents longer. The wind likes old snowflakes. We've learned how to float, not fall. That's what I want, Flurry cried. To stay frozen. Forever. He turned slowly in the breeze. Frozen things are still. Still things don't grow. And what doesn't grow cracks. Flurry blinked. But I'm beautiful like this. Yes, the elder said. But you'll be beautiful when you melt too. In a different way. Into something that flows. Changes. Touches everything. She wasn't ready for this. Not ready for change. Not ready for the idea that her purpose might be to end. Isn't there a way to stay as we are? She asked. The elder sighed, a sound like snow sliding from a roof. Only in fear. Only in hiding. And with that, he caught a gust of wind and soared upward, leaving Flurry spinning slowly in his fading wake. The ground was closer now, and so was the light. A low whisper wound its way through the air, curling around Flurry like a ribbon of sound. It didn't belong to any snowflake. It was older, wider, deeper. It was the wind. Little one, the breeze cooed. You cling so tightly for something with no strings. Flurry gasped, startled. Who said that? I did, the wind replied, its voice everywhere and nowhere at once. I carried you from the cloud. Cradle you now. And I'll carry you still, long after you change. Flurry spun nervously. But I don't want to change. I want to stay like this. Beautiful, cold, whole. The wind's laugh was soft, like powder falling from pine branches. And yet, you've already changed, haven't you? Flurry froze mid-twirl. What do you mean? You were part of a cloud. Then you were a flake. Now you're falling. Soon you'll melt. And then you'll flow. And flow. And rise again. No, Flurry insisted. That's losing myself. Ah, the wind sighed. But you never really lose yourself. You become yourself in new forms. Haven't you noticed? Every snowflake sings its own song, but the song never ends, even after the note is gone. Flurry didn't answer. She didn't know how to answer. The ground was near now. She could see branches, enemies, a tiny mitten waving in the air. The wind curled around her once more. "I'll carry your memory," it whispered, "whether you let go or not." And then it drifted off, humming something ancient and kind. Flurry looked down, chest aching. She had no feet, no heart, no lungs, but somehow she felt them all at once. Was this fear? Or was this the beginning of something else? The sun had climbed higher now, casting long golden beams across rooftops and icicles. Its warmth didn't roar or blaze. It simply was, radiating with quiet certainty. And Flurry could feel it, not just on her edges but in her center. She hissed, a tiny invisible sound, as a corner of her arm began to soften. "No, no, no," she whispered, pulling herself in tighter. "Not yet." Below, the other snowflakes landed, some on rooftops, some on branches, many on the ground. And as they touched, they shimmered once more, then slowly began to vanish. Or so it seemed. They melted into sparkling droplets, tiny beads of light that slid down gutters, seeped into the roots of trees, or soaked into the scarves of laughing children. And they smiled. Even as they disappeared, Flurry wanted to scream at them. "How can you be okay with this?" But no one answered. They were too busy becoming something else. The warmth crept closer. Not fast, just inevitable. She looked up. The clouds that once held her were gone now, scattered like thoughts at the end of a dream. There was no going back. A pang of panic twisted through her. I was safe up there. But another thought whispered from deep within. Were you really living or just hiding? She shut her eyes, wishing she could stop the sun, freeze time, reverse the fall. But something inside her, some ancient echo of the wind's voice, of the elder flake's calm, spoke instead. It's not the end if you choose it. Still, Flurry clenched tightly. If she had to melt, it wouldn't be without a fight. And yet, something soft landed beneath her. A mitten. Woolly. Warm. Waiting. She didn't know it yet, but this would change everything. Flurry touched down gently, onto the soft wool of a mitten. It was pink, a little frayed at the fingertips, and attached to the hand of a young girl skipping through a snow-covered path. The mitten bounced lightly with each step, but Flurry held on, clinging to a loose thread like it was a lifeline. Warmth pulsed beneath her. Not the aggressive warmth of the sun, but something softer. Human warmth. Living warmth. Flurry winced. She expected to melt instantly, to disappear. But instead she held steady. Just cold enough to remain herself. She dared to look up. The girl was smiling. Her eyes sparkled brighter than icicles, and her cheeks were flushed with winter joy. She glanced down at her mitten and gasped. "Oh, look, Mommy," she cried. "This one's shaped like a star." Flurry blinked. She was the star. The girl held her mitten still, marveling at Flurry's shape. "It's perfect," she whispered. For a moment, time froze again. Flurry felt something she'd never experienced before. Being seen. Not as a piece of the sky or a whisper of weather, but as a thing of beauty. Not just fleeting but meaningful. The girl leaned close, her breath misting softly. Flurry trembled. One breath too long and she'd be gone. But the girl didn't blow. She didn't brush. She simply stared, wide-eyed and quiet, as if afraid to break the magic. The mitten lifted. Flurry swayed but stayed. And as they walked through the forest, Flurry rode along like royalty. Her fear melted just a little, not into water but into wonder. For the first time she thought, maybe falling wasn't the worst thing after all. Flurry clung to the mitten as the girl skipped down a winding trail, her boots crunching into the snow with each joyful step. Around them the forest sparkled, branches cloaked in silver, the sky a soft powdery gray. The mitten rose and fell with the girl's swing, like a slow, lulling ride. And Flurry watched. She saw the world in ways no flake in a cloud ever could. She saw deer tracks stitched into the snow like secret stories. She saw birds hop from branch to branch, fluffing their feathers against the cold. She saw icicles hanging like chandeliers from pine boughs, catching sunlight in their crystalline fingers. But more than that, she saw the girl. The little human was humming now, her breath forming clouds that drifted like tiny ghosts. Flurry could feel the warmth of the girl's joy. It didn't burn, soothe. It was the kind of heat that made things grow, not vanish. Occasionally, the girl peeked at her mitten again, checking to see if Flurry was still there. And each time she smiled, soft, reverent, as if looking at a treasure. Flurry found herself softening. Not physically, though that too was inevitable, but inside. In places she didn't know she had. Why is she looking at me like that? Flurry wondered. I'm just one snowflake. And yet, in that child's eyes, she wasn't just anything. She was a marvel. Maybe that was the point. Not how long you lasted, but how deeply you were noticed. The mitten paused. The girl had stopped walking. They stood beneath a towering spruce tree now, heavy with snow. Look at that, the girl whispered, gazing up. Flurry looked too. And for the first time since she began to fall, she didn't feel afraid. She felt alive. The mitten rose again as the girl lifted her hand, reaching toward the snow-draped branches above. A light breeze fluttered through the spruce tree, loosening a flurry of snowflakes that drifted down like whispers from the sky. Flurry watched them descend. Some landed on the girl's coat, others vanished into the folds of her scarf. But a few shimmered in the air around her, spinning lazily in the filtered sunlight. They danced even now. She could hear their laughter, faint and fading, like wind chimes struck from memory. Flurry held tighter to the mitten. She was no longer alone, yet still unsure. The warmth beneath her wasn't melting her completely, but it was changing her. She felt it in the delicate tension of her edges, in the hum just below the surface of her form. She was beginning to let go. The girl skipped again, humming a new tune, her other mitten reaching out to brush snow from a bush. Each step brought Flurry into new sights. A tiny red bird puffed up like a berry, a frozen creek coated in glassy stillness, and a family of snowmen in a clearing. One tall, one short, one leaning sideways as if laughing. As they passed the snowmen, the girl paused again. "This one looks like Daddy," she giggled, pointing to the crooked one. Flurry smiled, or whatever the snowflake version of a smile might be. The child's world was made of laughter, of wonder, of love gently worn into the folds of a mitten. And that warmth, once feared, now felt like something else. Not an enemy, not an end, but an invitation. An invitation to be part of something far beyond the cloud where she was born. To join the story instead of watching from the sky. The forest opened into a clearing bathed in filtered sunlight, where beams slipped between branches like golden threads. Snow blanketed everything. Logs, bushes, even the small wooden sign that read Maple Hollow Trail. But what truly caught Flurry's eye were the branches above. The trees glistened with hundreds of snowflakes, clinging delicately to twigs and needles. And though many were already beginning to melt, none seemed afraid. In fact, they shimmered brighter than ever, as if the warmth itself made them sparkle more. One flake, balanced on a bare branch tip, saw Flurry on the mitten and called out, "First fall, huh?" Flurry, slightly startled, replied, "How did you know? You've still got that tight curl to your corners," the flake chuckled. "Don't worry, it'll relax. You'll see." "But, aren't you melting?" Flurry asked, eyeing the droplet forming at the branch's edge. "Yes," the flake said matter-of-factly. "Isn't it wonderful?" Flurry hesitated. "I used to think it was awful." "I did too," said the flake. "Until I realized, this isn't the end. It's the beginning of becoming something more." "But what if I disappear?" "You don't," the flake replied gently. "You change. You become part of the branch, the root, the stream. You fall again, only differently. A soft drip echoed as the flake finally let go, melting into a glistening droplet that slid silently down the branch and vanished into the snow below. Flurry stared at the spot where the flake had been. Her fear still whispered, but now it was joined by something else. A flicker of curiosity. Was this what they all meant? Not destruction, but transition. She looked up, watching as the sunlight filtered through melting flakes like stained glass. And for the first time, Flurry stopped resisting the warmth. Just a little. The girl wandered toward a small pond nestled in the woods, its surface a perfect mirror of the sky above. Flurry, still perched delicately on the mitten, gazed down and gasped. If snowflakes could gasp, there she was. Her reflection stared back, a fragile, six-pointed crystal glowing faintly in the winter light. She'd never seen herself before, not like this. In the clouds, she was just one of many. But here, she looked like something from a dream. Is that really me? She wondered. No. Because even as she admired her delicate structure, she noticed the tiniest shimmer at one corner, an edge softening, a droplet forming. Her reflection blurred slightly, rippling with the girl's breath and the faintest wind. Flurry braced. This was it. The beginning of the end. But instead of panic, she felt stillness. The pond's reflection shimmered with other images now. Snowflakes drifting, droplets sliding into the earth, mist rising from morning fields. It was like watching time through water, change flowing forward in every frame. And in each one, something remained. Pattern, a rhythm, cycle. Even if I melt, she thought, maybe I don't vanish. Maybe I just move forward. A robin swooped down, skimming the icy surface and sending ripples across the pond. Flurry's reflection fractured. Dozens of shimmering versions of herself, each flickering and fading. Strangely, it didn't scare her. Instead, it reminded her that even in pieces, she could be beautiful. The girl exhaled gently, her breath clouding the air. And Flurry, without even realizing, loosened her hold on the mitten just a touch. Not to fall. Not yet. But enough to feel herself soften, shimmer, and begin to listen. To the pond. To the wind. To herself. They lingered at the edge of the pond, where soft snowbanks curved like sleepy hills. The girl sat down on a low log, her mitten resting still, giving Flurry a moment of quiet. Nearby, a cluster of snowdrifts huddled beneath the trees, glittering in patches of sun and shadow. Flurry listened. At first, she thought the wind was playing tricks again. But no, there were voices. Whispered. Ancient. The snowdrifts were telling stories. Each one spoke in a rhythm slower than flakes, slower than wind, as if time itself were folding into words. We were once clouds, one said. Then rivers, said another. Then mist rising from morning grass, added a third. Flurry strained to hear, captivated. I remember the taste of a mountain stream, one whispered dreamily. I remember tumbling down a waterfall, another chimed. And I, said the softest voice, remember a child's tears, not of sadness but of joy. They weren't afraid. They spoke of melting like one might speak of sleeping, temporary, gentle, necessary. Flurry edged closer on the mitten, hoping to catch more. How did you stop being afraid? She asked, barely louder than a snowflake's sigh. A snowdrift chuckled softly. We never stopped being afraid. We just stopped running from it. Another voice added. And we realized, nothing really ends. It just reshapes. Their words sank into her like sunlight through ice. Flurry felt something shift inside her, a release she couldn't explain. Her fear didn't vanish. It evolved. She wasn't sure what would come next. But for the first time she was okay with not knowing. Because now, she believed it might be beautiful. A breeze stirred, and the girl stood up again, brushing snow off her coat. Her mitten swung slightly, and Flurry held on, not tightly but with grace. That's when it happened. The girl lifted her hand, bringing it close to her face, eyes wide in wonder. She leaned in and breathed. Warmth swept over Flurry in a single tender exhale, gentle but complete. Flurry felt it instantly. A tingle at her edges, a loosening in her arms. Her perfect crystalline structure, so fiercely preserved, began to soften. This was it. The moment she had feared since the first whisper of wind. She had a choice. She could fight, strain, resist, harden, or let go. Flurry didn't think. He simply felt. The warmth wasn't fire. It wasn't destruction. It was connection. The breath of a child. The breath of life. A droplet formed at her center, and for a single heartbeat, she felt both who she had been and who she might become. She remembered the cloud. She remembered the fall. She remembered the pond, the songs, the stories. And now, she felt a new story stirring, one that could only begin if she allowed the end of this one. So Flurry closed her invisible eyes and let herself melt, not in fear, in peace. A single drop slid from the mitten and landed on the girl's cheek, leaving a cool kiss that made her giggle. She wiped it away, not knowing she'd been touched by a snowflake with a name. But Flurry knew. As she soaked into the girl's skin, into the wool of the mitten, into the world, she felt more, not less. She had chosen. And in choosing, she had begun again. Flurry slipped from the girl's mitten as a tiny droplet, landing on the snowy path below. She had no edges now, no crystal arms, no sharp corners to clutch. She was round, fluid, free. First it felt strange being without shape. But soon she realized. She hadn't lost herself. She'd simply become more flexible. She nestled into the snowpack, joining a tiny stream of melting flakes flowing together toward a gentle slope. They hummed softly as they moved. Some old, some new, all shimmering in motion. "Is this what you feared?" asked a droplet beside her, familiar in tone. Flurry paused. "I thought melting meant ending. But I don't feel gone." The droplet laughed, swirling joyfully. "Of course not. You're just moving forward." Together, they flowed over pebbles and frozen leaves, weaving around pine roots and dipping through patches of light. The snow beneath them sighed as it softened, opening channels that led to something bigger. "We're heading for the stream," another drop called. "It's waiting." And there it was. A narrow ribbon of running water, not frozen, not still. Alive. Flurry's little stream joined it in a hush, and suddenly she was moving faster, gliding over rocks and between reeds. She could feel the rhythm of the earth now. Pulsing, tugging, breathing. Everywhere memories echoed, of falling, of fearing, of holding on. But now she was being held. By the stream. By the land. She passed a fallen branch, watched a beetle crawl across a stone, felt sunlight warm her from above. She didn't fight it anymore. It wasn't heat that ended her. It was fear. And fear had been left behind on a mitten. Now she was part of something flowing, timeless, beautiful. Not the end. Not even close. Flurry drifted peacefully within the stream, no longer a single drop, but part of a symphony of water. Around her, other former snowflakes shimmered and swirled, each with their own story, their own journey. Some had come from mountaintops, others from rooftops or distant hills. But here they were all the same. Movement, memory, and possibility. The current carried them through twisting bends and under low-hanging branches. They passed moss-covered stones and clusters of sleeping roots. Occasionally, a ripple would lift Flurry gently, letting her catch a glimpse of the sky. It looked familiar now, not frightening but tender. A cradle she had once called home. "You feel it, don't you?" a nearby droplet murmured, gliding alongside her. "Feel what?" Flurry asked. "The infinite," it said. "This stream doesn't just end in a puddle. Joins rivers. Rivers reach oceans. And from oceans, we rise again." Flurry was quiet. The idea stirred something in her core. "To think," she whispered, "I tried so hard to stay frozen." "You weren't wrong to be afraid," the droplet said. "But sometimes the bravest thing is to change anyway." Ahead, the stream widened. Birds chirped overhead, and sunlight filtered down through birch trees like falling lace. The water sparkled. Flurry felt herself shine too, not in spite of her melting but because of it. They passed under a tiny wooden bridge where children had drawn hearts and names in chalk. A boy leaned over the railing, dropping a pine cone into the stream. It spun past them like a tiny ship on a grand adventure. "Where do we go next?" Flurry asked. The droplet beside her smiled, voice full of knowing. "Wherever the story needs us to." And so they flowed on, into the bend, into the unknown, into forever. Days passed. Not that Flurry counted them anymore. Time in the river didn't tick or talk. Flowed. She slipped through valleys, slid around stones, and sometimes paused in still pools that reflected stars. Each bend of the river brought new textures, new scents, new sounds. The rustle of reeds, the whisper of frogs, the chorus of wind over water. And with each mile, Flurry felt herself growing. Not larger but deeper. Not heavier but fuller. The world had expanded, and so had she. One morning, a patch of sunlight danced on her surface, lifting her toward the air like a feather. She rose. Not fast, not fierce, but steadily. She was evaporating. And she was ready. The warmth was familiar now, like an old friend. It cradled her as she turned from liquid to mist, invisible to any eye but fully herself. She rose through the branches, higher than birds, higher than mountaintops. Clouds welcomed her. Not the ones she remembered. Those were long gone. But new ones, shaped from rivers and oceans and tears and morning dew. She drifted into them, soft and formless, joining a misty family that whispered without words. "You've returned," one murmured. "But I'm not the same," she replied. "None of us are," another answered. "And that's what makes the cycle sacred." Flurry settled among them, not to hide this time, but to rest, to become part of something vast. She could feel the potential forming again, weight gathering, shapes whispering, a readiness to fall. One day soon, she'd become a snowflake again, maybe in another forest, maybe on another mitten. And next time, she wouldn't resist. She'd fall with open arms, singing with the wind, because now she understood. To fall is to begin. Within the clouds, Flurry hovered, no longer shaped like a snowflake, yet no less herself. Around her, vapor stirred and swirled, some light as breath, others dense with memory. Each wisp had a story, and they shared them in soft pulses and echoing glimmers. She listened. One had been rain on a farmer's hand. Another had clung to a hawk's feather mid-flight. A third had frozen into hail and shattered on a canyon rock. Their tales were not of endings, but of transitions, brief moments that built bridges from one form to the next. Flurry didn't just feel them. She understood them. She was them. The cold began to settle again, gently, like an old friend placing a blanket over her shoulders. Crystals began to form. First a spark, then a branch, then 6 delicate arms of intricate geometry. She was becoming a snowflake again. But this time she welcomed it. No clinging, no fear, just becoming. When the moment arrived, the wind gave a gentle tug, familiar as a lullaby. She detached from the cloud, glittering anew, and began to fall. But this wasn't the wild flailing of her first descent. Now she glided. The sky spread wide before her, not as something to flee, but something to embrace. Every gust, every current, every shimmer of sunlight felt like an invitation. She let the air guide her, not resisting, not retreating. And around her, other snowflakes danced. Not strangers this time, but companions. Some old, some new. Some laughing, some silent. All falling with purpose. Below, a fresh world waited. trees ready to be dusted, rooftops to sparkle, cheeks to be kissed. This time she didn't whisper no. She whispered, "Thank you." The clouds behind her dissolved into soft cotton, and the earth below rose into view like a memory rediscovered. This time, Flurry didn't look at the sun with fear. She welcomed its light, knowing it played its part too. She spun slowly, savoring the view. Mountains glistened in the distance. Rivers wound like silver threads. Forests blanketed the hills, and in one small village nestled beneath the trees, a garden lay covered in morning frost. That's where she was headed. The wind nudged her with care, guiding her through a current filled with whispering snowflakes. Some were laughing, others humming quiet tunes. Flurry drifted among them, not lost in the crowd but belonging. And in the midst of that silent descent, she noticed something. She was glowing, not in a blazing, fiery way, not even brightly, just a gentle, inner shimmer, like the calm heartbeat of someone who finally understood their place in the song. Below her, a tiny tree stood in the garden, its branches bare except for one solitary bud curled in winter sleep. As Flurry neared, the wind slowed. Her spin softened. The earth held its breath, and then touched down. She landed delicately on the edge of the tree bud, her 6 new arms embracing it like a blanket. There was no fear now, only quiet. She felt the warmth from the bud, not enough to melt her right away, but enough to remind her. Spring was coming, and she would be part of it. She wouldn't just vanish. She would nourish. She would begin. A passing bird chirped in the distance. Somewhere a child laughed. And Flurry, once frozen in fear, rested gently on the edge of new life, her shimmer fading not into absence, but into promise. Time passed, but not in minutes or hours. In moments, the morning sun climbed higher, casting a soft glow across the garden. Shadows retreated, and the frost on the ground began to loosen its grip. Birds sang their delicate songs, the kind only early light can summon. Flurry, resting on the tree bud, felt it all. She was no longer merely a snowflake, nor a drop, nor vapor. She was part of the rhythm now, the breath of the world rising and falling with change. Her journey had not erased her. It had revealed her. A gentle warmth pulsed from the bud beneath her. Not heat to fear, heat to awaken. The tree stirred, almost imperceptibly. Deep within, life was preparing to stretch, to bloom. And Flurry was there, at the center of it, not as an outsider but as nourishment, as memory, as meaning. She imagined the roots below, drinking in her essence. The leaves not yet born, destined to shimmer in sunlight fed by her melting form. The thought didn't sadden her. It gave her peace. Nearby, a breeze passed through the trees. It brushed over Flurry's fragile structure, and for a heartbeat she flickered, sparkled, then softened. A droplet formed at her edge, slow and serene. She didn't fight it. The droplet clung for just a moment longer, then slipped free, sliding down the bud stem and into the soil below. There she would rest, feed, become. The wind lingered, almost as if to say goodbye. But Flurry didn't need it now. She had arrived, not just at a destination but in understanding. She had fallen. She had melted. She had risen. And now she had given. What more could a snowflake hope for? The garden settled into stillness as the sun climbed toward midday. Snow receded in slow ripples, unveiling blades of grass and sleepy sprouts beneath. Life stirred in everything. And in that quiet soil, where Flurry now nestled, new beginnings whispered. She was water now, seeping deep, weaving through roots that reached toward spring. She felt the pulse of the tree, the slow, ancient rhythm of growth. She was part of it, no longer separate, no longer holding back. Above her, the bud swelled slightly, fed by the gift she had offered. And Flurry smiled. She remembered it all. The trembling descent, the mitten, the pond, the river, the rise. She remembered her panic, her pride, her wonder, her release. Each stage had felt final, but none were. 'Twas a door. 'Ch held another song. A small worm wiggled nearby, and a beetle trundled over the melting earth. They didn't know her name, but they would carry her forward too. She was in the bark, the bud, the bloom yet to be. She was the shimmer of dew that would crown a leaf come spring, the drop of water that would quench a root in summer, the mist that would rise again come fall. One flake in a forever of becoming. And far above, in a drifting cloud forming quietly at the edge of the sky, vapor gathered. Not flurry, not yet. Soon. Because life doesn't end. Circles. And snowflakes like stories return. Gently, softly, and always just in time. So now, as you close your eyes and drift into dreams, remember Flurry. Not as the flake who feared the sun, but as the soul who found courage in letting go. She didn't melt away. She melted into soil, into stream, into tree, into something new, something necessary, something beautiful. Her fall was not a failure. It was a flight. Her change was not a loss. It was a becoming. And just like her, we all have moments when we tremble, when we cling, when we question, when we float between holding on and letting go. But change is not the end. It's the invitation, the next beginning. So rest now, little listener. Let your worries soften like snow under morning light. Let the world carry you just for a while. And when you rise again, may you glimmer with all the wonder Flurry found along the way.